Sir, I asked you to please bring my son home. He is an outstanding young man that fought willingly for his country. My son made the decision. I'm very proud for the decision he made, because today I still have my son instead of a folded flag. Actions that you have taken have shown me that you believe in second chances. And that's all I'm asking you for, is a second chance for my son. Thank you.
All right, that's the mother. You can hear the pain in her voice of First Lieutenant Clint Lorance. We have talked about Clint a lot on this program. It's been a while. And he was with the 82nd Airborne Division, U.S. Army. And he's now facing a 20-year jail sentence. We've gone over the particulars in this case. Now, we had the case of Eddie Gallagher. We saw a media rush to judgment. We saw people rush to judgment. Everyone said, oh, it's guilty, guilty, guilty. We have some very, very significant, serious problems, especially when we go back to the Obama era and their rules of engagement. We ask these kids to put their life on the line. And then we have a bunch of guys in offices in the safety and security of their bases back at home that are analyzing what you do in a life and death situation, and a call that you have to make that if you make the wrong call could result in the death of the people that you serve with. And as a platoon leader, you are supposed to protect as their leader. Now, so we've got a case, and this is an interesting case to me, and it's frustrating to me more, as much as it is for the family and everybody else. So Clint Lorance leads men on a combat control through heavily, mine-planted Afghan minefields that they have, and his platoon moves single file. Why? To avoid the mines, the IEDs that are being planted. He is 2/3 of the way back, can't see front. And at 8 a.m., 3 Afghani men start charging, Clint Lorance's team on motorcycles. Now, this is on a road that is controlled by the Taliban. They ignore all signs to stay off the road. They weren't supposed to be there. Now, before Clint Lorance got his position with this particular platoon that he is leading, it was about a week earlier that guys on motorcycles with IEDs actually ended up killing the platoon leader and other members of this new platoon that Clint Lorance had taken over. So you got to keep this in context. There's texture to all of this. And anyway, so all of this is happening here, and all these motorcycles, again, we just had members of this platoon killed by guys on motorcycles. Now they're heading towards this platoon again on motorcycles, not stopping at the area where they were supposed to stop. So now Clint Lorance is the leader. Clint Lorance knows the history of what happened 2 weeks prior to him becoming the platoon leader. And so he has got maybe 5, 10, 15 seconds to make a decision. What do I do here? Is this another? Am I going to have more American kids killed by these guys on motorcycles? And what do I do? Well, he had 15 seconds to decide. As per the testimony at the court-martial hearing, the Taliban had been killing Americans by suicide motorcycle bombings. It happened to this very platoon. And concerned about the attack, Lorance ordered his men to open fire. Who are we to second-guess that decision? I mean, look, just seriously, who are we to second-guess that decision? His men killed 2 of the 3 riders. Now, the interesting thing is that evidence surfaced after the fact, because they didn't have IEDs with them on the motorcycles. And later on, after the trial, we find out that the DNA of these guys on these motorcycles were on IEDs. I mean, it's a comedy of errors. But the problem is we have government officials in Washington and people that don't know rules of engagement that never should be applied to troops in battle. When we're fighting wars, the idea is to win the war. The idea is to protect your platoon. And if you had 2 weeks ago guys on motorcycles kill members of the very same platoon, you would think new guys on motorcycles are there to do the same thing. And if you're the platoon leader, you've got to make the call. Now, let's just say for a second that Clint Lorance made the other decision, and it turned out there was another attack like 2 weeks prior. Okay, now he has to live the rest of his life knowing that he should have acted because how many platoon members or maybe even himself were killed? You can't fight a war this way. And now he is in Leavenworth. He's got a 20-year sentence. Anyway, with all that said, joining us now is Lieutenant Colonel John Maher, and former DOJ attorney representing Clint Lorance, and Don Brown, a former U.S. Navy JAG officer, and he's the author of the book Travesty of Justice, The Shocking Prosecution of Lieutenant Clint Lorance, one of the 4 former JAG officers serving on Lorance's legal team. Guys, what's the update in the case? I mean, do we have a shot of getting Clint Lorance out of Leavenworth, back in society where he belongs? To me, number one, we have no right to second guess that decision in light of what had happened. And number two, the rules of engagement, we can't send men and women into fight wars with handcuffs on the way we have been doing.
Sean, it's John Maher. Thank you so much, sir, for having us on the case today or on the program this afternoon. Yes, we have a chance if you and Linda and the rest of the Hannity program continue to put out to your readership, listenership, and everyone out there who understands the fact that Lorance did not get a fair trial. If you look at what we filed earlier this afternoon, it's called just a regular letter to the, shall I say, the Secretary of the Army. And the Secretary of the Army, we've asked him to commence an investigation because, much like the Gallagher case, in the Gallagher case, you were bugging Americans, you were bugging the defense attorneys, and the Justice Department was not there. You were spying on American citizens. What we have done now recently is asked the Secretary of the Army to follow the Secretary of the Navy's actual lead. He stepped up and said, I think there's problems in the Navy JAG Corps. We're asking for the Army JAG Corps to look in the same. And the Lorance case is just the tip of the iceberg. And so that's where we are right now with regard to the Lorance case.
Just to add what John said, Sean, when you look at what happened in the Gallagher case, as bad as that was, what's happened with Lorance makes Gallagher almost look like Romper Room. And as an ex-naval officer, I'm so grateful that the Secretary of the Navy is now initiating a review. As John says, it must be done in the Army, but the reason it's happening in the Navy is because President Donald Trump got involved in that Gallagher case. And he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and it's his job ultimately to ensure good order and discipline. The president was at his finest, I thought, July 4th when he called for young men and women to join the military, but the military has to understand that commander-in-chief has their backs. And I know when you look at what's happened with Clint Lorance, there's no longer a question as to whether there's guilt or innocence, because the Army hid biometrics evidence of guilt. They hid biometrics evidence that these bomb makers were the guys that got killed. Clint's men killed the enemy. But now the question is, what can the president do? As you know, Sean, the defense team, of which I'm honored to be a part of and serving under John here, has prepared an order to disapprove the findings and sentencing for Clint's court-martial, and all we need is one presidential signature. And you mentioned a moment ago some of the Obama-era rules. Well, I would ask President Trump to remember what happened in the Obama era. Look at Bo Bergdahl. We sent many Americans looking for that guy. He deserted his unit in Afghanistan. We lost 6 Americans, and Obama trades 5 Taliban for that guy. Sean, that guy never served 1 day behind bars, and he deserted his country. Clint Lorance is here for 20 years. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I do agree and concur with my colleague. The more we can keep this in the public arena, the better, because we don't want Clint to be forgotten. But, you know, we've got Labor Day coming up. The president's got the opportunity, the one signature to make it a Star-Spangled Labor Day. And I just appeal to him, please sign and autograph that order to disallow the findings and sentencing in Clint's court-martial. Let's get this done, and don't make Clint rot one more day in prison. He's an American hero, and it's a travesty of justice in all forums. There have been several members of the Congress who have made overtures to the administration. Congressman Bill Flores out of Texas being one, Garrett Graves out of Louisiana being another, and most recently Congressman Abraham out of Louisiana have made direct overtures to the administration. Whether or not they've gotten right into the president's ear, I don't know, but we've had a bit of congressional support. But, you know, Mr. President, if you're listening, you know, we've got the papers ready now.
Question I have is there anybody within government, within the Defense Department itself, or in any part of the military that you know might be fighting this?
Yes, Mr. Hannity.
That's what I want to know. Who is in the president's ear telling him when he asked the question, why shouldn't I do this? Why? And who would be saying something negative?
What happens is,
John, go ahead.
To the answer, it's the Judge Advocate General of the Army, Lieutenant General Charles Petey. It's also Brigadier General Joseph Berger III. Both of those fine officers, and we never question their patriotism, but they have bought a party line to protect the Army rather than to say, we want to make sure that this process produces a constitutionally compliant
What would they
result.
be saying on the other side of this? Because I think this is an important question, because I know how President Trump works on issues like this. He hears about it. He says, wait, what? And then he asks people that would know, or tells people to get to know. And those arguments need to be overcome and disproven. And how do you do that?
Sean, they're going to give an incomplete picture. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
But what would be the motivation of anybody in the military to allow the sacrifice of one brave soldier that did the right thing? Well, what is their possible motivation to try and get this thing right, this injustice righted?
Mr. Hannity, I'll take it. Here's why. They're defending the Army and the result rather than defending the process. I only made it to Lieutenant Colonel, and I was not the smartest kid around. But I will tell you this.
There you are.
They have adopted an advocacy position rather than an entrusting of the process. And that's where they belong. When you make Lieutenant General, when you make Brigadier General, and when there's only a small number of Army judge advocates, you are entrusted with ensuring your process produces a constitutionally liable and protected result. And what they have done now, they forgot that they are in charge of the process. Instead, they become advocates. And they want to protect.
It really is. It's really sad. Go ahead, Don. You wanted to weigh in.
I was just going to say they're going to hide information from the president. They're going to say, Mr. President, this guy was convicted of murder. Yeah, but they won't tell the president he never pulled a trigger. They won't tell the president we've got biometrics showing that his guys shot the enemy. They won't tell him that. They'll say his guys testified against him. Yeah, but they won't tell the president that those handful of officers, soldiers who testified against him were ordered to testify by the commander of the 82nd Airborne and put under a grant of immunity. They won't tell you any of that. They won't tell the president that Clint Lorance never pulled a trigger, nor will they tell the president he only had 15 seconds to act in a war zone where people are getting killed, where, as you pointed out, just 3 weeks later, there was a huge motorcycle attack at Kandahar Air Base killing 22 Afghans. They won't tell him that. They will only give him the result, as John said, to protect the result for the integrity of the Army. They dug in deep. These guys are Obama appointees. They dug in deep, and they're trying to protect their position. The president sees the entire evidence. This thing would have been over a long time ago, and we can get that evidence to him in a heartbeat.
All right, we'll do our best to help you out. This is a travesty of justice. We've been on this case for too long. It has been ignored by too many, and there is no rationale that anybody can give me that we're going to put these kids in harm's way and these kids get killed in the line of duty, and then we send in a new platoon leader. The same conditions are unfolding right before his eyes. And to me, the fact that, this has happened, we can't ask these guys to go fight and put handcuffs on them and then put them on trial when they have to make split-second decisions that are life and death for the people that they are ordered to protect. John, Don, thank you both. Appreciate you being with us. We're not finished with this issue. We're going to stay on it.